Hello, everyone, and welcome to Struktur series, Understanding the Artist. We're glad you're here, and I would love to see who is here. If you would let us know where you're coming from in the chat. Doing our live Zoom webinars is a little different because we don't have an audience to interact with. So want to let you know that this is an interactive live session. So we are talking with our panelists, our guests live, and we have the chat bar open for comments. So please, as you have comments, links, questions, not questions, but put them in the chat. Go ahead and interact as much as you want, as often as you want. This is the one place where you can chat while the speakers are speaking. If you do have questions for our speakers or for myself during any of the session, please put that in the Q&A, which is the button that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. That is the place that we're filtering real questions. But we do have a team of people that are looking at the chat to interact with things there. So welcome again, and I want to say a big thank you to Karen Dunn with KMD Productions and the KMD team. Without them, this would not run as smoothly as it does. It looks easy, but it's not. And also thank you to Dan Bones for our opening animation and to Greg Brace for the original music to kick us off. So relax, have a good time, and let's get into it. So today I'm going to kick us off talking a little bit about understanding the artist and what that means to me. It's a very personal and a topic that's really close to my heart. And it's something that is of growing importance to me. It has been growing in importance throughout my life and my career, almost without me knowing it. But as I look back, it has been something that has become more and more prevalent. And that's why I brought this topic to the table for this second episode of Struktur event. So only recently in my life personally have I re-identified as an artist. I'm kind of going through that midlife questioning of, is this what I want to do? Am I doing what I want? What do I want for the rest of my life? Who am I? And it prompted a lot of discussion within myself and outside of myself as to, where I wanted to go from here. I had been working for many years as a designer, about 15, 20 years in the apparel design field, as well as other fields. But I had never really labeled myself as an artist, which is funny because my entire life I have done work and projects as a visual artist, a graphic artist. I have a certificate in graphic design. I'm a fashion designer. I've worked for a photographer and done photography. I was a theater kid and performed and worked in community theater. I'm a singer and a musician now. I've done drafting and architectural design and interior design. And for 30 years, I've been a martial artist. But I had a really hard time calling myself an artist. I didn't really know what that meant. But when I started digging into my own history and like, well, who am I? At my core, really deep, who am I? The very first thing I ever identified with was being an artist. And I brought that back to a memory of when I was 5 years old in kindergarten. I remember we had a very large kindergarten class that was broken up into two groups, but we were all in one big room together. And at the beginning of school, at the beginning of the kindergarten year, we were asked to do a self-portrait. Draw who you are. I mean, it's a very common thing for kindergarten class. And I still remember what the drawing looked like. And I remember we had very simple crayons back then. I mean, this is 1975, so I'm really dating myself there. And we had all the basic colors. We didn't have the big set of multi-colors. We didn't have special colors for skin. And I took the orange crayon and I thought, well, I want some skin color here. So I did it really, really, really lightly. And when the pictures went up, I remember all the kids gravitating to my picture and paying all this attention to it, which made me really nervous and really uncomfortable. But then they were asking me, how did you do the skin color? How did you do that? Where'd you get that? And I told them what I did, and they're like, wow. And then right then I knew I was an artist. I was labeled as an artist, and that was my first identity and something that always stuck with me. But for some reason, I had a really hard time owning that piece. So And then as I was working as a designer, that was when I really started to notice something different. Throughout the years and all the jobs that I had, I started to notice something different between the people who did the creative work and the people who did the business. I really started to notice that we thought differently. There was a lot of misunderstandings. There was a lot of frustrations. There was a lot of communication issues. A lot of people didn't understand, what does the artist do? And it was a really challenging environment. I noticed that one of my first jobs, that the designers left a lot. Like they left to go home and design, and I learned how to do that. And I slowly learned why, that the environment that they were in was really hard for them to actually create and be creative. And I was really curious about that. And the further along I went, I started to see my own team struggle, and I had to step up for my team and become an advocate for the creative person, the creative mind, the designer, the artist. And when I finished my career in design, I launched Struktur Event, which was the live event that precludes this one, precedes it. And it was for the designers. It was because the designers and the creatives didn't actually have a place to gather, a place to meet. I found that they were very isolated, and they felt very isolated within their companies. So we started Struktur Event to bring them together, and surprisingly found that there just really wasn't anything out there. It was kind of like therapy for everybody to get together. And that's when we really began to understand the artistic mind and how we were different. So we wanted to continue that conversation here with Struktur Society and with this talk today. So quickly, before we bring our guests in, I wanted to go through a few things about artists. One is, who is the artist? Here's some technical details about who artists are. And in the link, I think we're going to put this up as well. I found a study from the National Endowment for the Arts, which actually came out April of 2019, right before the pandemic hit. So it's recent information. Here we have, and the link will be, yeah, I see it there, it's up. You can pull that up. There's a lot of information in it. I haven't even gone through all of it, but I'm just giving you some tidbits here right now. For one, over 5 million workers in 2019 are employed in arts and cultural industries. Artists themselves are 3 times as likely as other workers to be self-employed. So this was something that they also we're starting to see self-employment going up in all fields, but artists themselves in certain fields were 3.5 times more likely to do so. Artists are becoming a larger share of the US labor force, so they're growing. And faster than average growth in employment is projected for set and exhibit designers, actors, producers and directors, and film and video editors. And I'm sure you can understand why with where we're at now in our new online culture. So we are growing. And another thing that I thought was interesting in the report, in 2017, there were numbers in the labor force, and they were talking about, for one, this is stating who an artist is. So these list of 10 types of artists, they're listed in order of how many, like the largest to the smallest. And the number of designers, artists in the labor force, first one is designers, and that's the top identified artist out there. So designers, and that was highest by far, 3 to 4 times the second one in the list. It's huge on the chart. Shrinks down to second being architects, then art directors and fine artists and animators are all grouped into one. Writers and authors. 5th is photographers. 6th is musicians. 7th, producers and directors. 8th, actors. 9th, announcers. And 10th is dancers and choreographers. Now, so all of those are considered artists. Now, the next bit of detail that I wanted to share from the report too was the percentage of these artists by occupation who hold this occupation as a second job, meaning they identify this as this, but it's not their prime occupation or source of supporting themselves. And it's almost the inverse. So the top one, so they have to do this as a second job and have a main job to support themselves. First one is musicians. Second is actors. Third is announcers. Fourth is photographers. Fifth, art directors, fine artists, animators. Sixth, writers and authors. Seventh, dancers and choreographers. Eighth, producers and directors. Ninth, designers. 10th, architects. It gives you a bit of information there. And what we find interesting is that many, in fact, a lot of these occupations and people don't identify themselves as artists. So now we want to talk about, what do they do? What do artists do? They create. They create things. They imagine things. They dream things up. They create something from nothing. They're always coming up with ideas. And they do that from a place of a deep need to create, a sensitivity, a desire that drives them, that they really can't even not create. I found a great statement by Pearl S. Buck, author of The Good Earth, and she wrote, "The truly creative mind in any field is no more than this: a human creature born abnormally, inhumanly sensitive. To them, a touch is a blow, a sound is a noise, a misfortune is a tragedy, a joy is an ecstasy, a friend is a lover is a god, and failure is death. Add to this the cruelly delicate organism, the overpowering necessity to create, so that without the creating of music or poetry or books or buildings or something of meaning, their very breath is cut off. They must create, must pour out creation. By some strange unknown inward urgency, they are not really alive unless they are creating." So that talks about, also leads us into how they're different. Artists really are a different way of thinking. They think differently, they exist differently, they see the world differently. They notice more. You might say they're more emotional, they're sensitive. This is what happens a lot in the business environment. You get that moniker a lot, that we're very sensitive, we're emotional. And I found recently a real distinct correlation between artists and what they call HSPs, highly sensitive people. The phrase was coined by Dr. Elaine Aron, and she has a book that I think we have, we're going to put in the link here, that about 15 to 20% of our population is an HSP, a highly sensitive person, and that our brains actually are wired differently. We process sensory data much more deeply and thoroughly than the average person. So we're taking in a lot of stimuli all the time. And they said, it's a trait that 15 to 20% of the population is wired to be this way, and 80% of the population is not. In fact, they found that in about 100 species of different types of species, not just humans, they found that to be true as well, that about 20% of the population of animals, insects, all kinds of things that they studied are similar. And so they think it's actually an evolutionary thing for the species, that 20% of your population is sensitive, like a canary in the coal mine. And so that has other traits that goes along with it that are more challenging, but they pick up on more. So that also means that we're very intense, we're overthinking, we think a lot, we think deeply. A lot of us are considered gifted, which is a term that we're not comfortable with. A lot of people aren't, because it's a little nerdy or it means something weird, but that, they say gifted children feel things with great intensity and experience the world in a different way. And so there's a lot of overlap in that. We're also very easily overstimulated. And we have, like there's the challenge with the open floor plan that a lot of us have had, and group events and being in crowds, so a lot of people or a lot of things going on. So why are artists necessary? We are the canary in the coal mine. We warn our society of things. We pick up on things before other people do. We question everything. We question why we do this, why we don't do that, why are we doing it that way, why is that happening? We say we're that little kid, why? And nothing is quite good enough. We're always looking at everything to make it better. How can we make it better? And that moves things forward. We're also very, we reflect a lot. We have a lot of we look inward a lot. We have a lot of inner knowledge. And they say that that also then helps others learn about themselves. As we dig in and present that out, it helps others learn. The biggest thing that I think about artists are, that I saw a lot in my designers and my design team, is that we're visionaries. We see things that aren't there. We see the world as it could be. And we have an innate need to drive towards that vision that we see. And it keeps us going. Like, we can't not do it. We never stop. So where are we most effective? That's finally on our who, what, where, when. That changes depending on society. You know, artists are needed at different times in different ways, and they shift around. With that, we're going to talk about that with our guests, you know, some of their experiences as being artists, as working with artists, as coaching artists, the challenges, the wonderful things, and kind of where we're at today. So with that, I would like to welcome our guests to the screen. Are they there? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, there you go. We've got 1, 2, and Wendy's almost there.
I'm not muted, but oh, it's me. Sorry.
Beautiful. I love that fade in. So welcome to all of you. We have Shelley Mitchell, we have Wendy Parr, and we have Tina Suca. And even though I just said your names, I would like to quickly, actually, if each one of you would just introduce yourselves so everybody can hear you, and just say what you do today. And why don't we start with Wendy?
Hi. Hi, I'm Wendy Parr. I'm a holistic artist coach. I used to be a vocal coach, but that's not what it's about. It's not just about the voice. So I refer to myself as an artist coach because I deal holistically with the entire artist. And I do artist development for creatives, any genre, different styles. Michelle and I connected because I do an event called the Artist Circle, which resonates exactly what you said. Like, artists really need a space for support and to connect one another. So I do a lot with community and primarily music, but like I said, with artists from every genre, and really helping artists be empowered, curate lives that are fulfilling, and create content and a life that, you know, is congruent with who they are. And in addition to that, I'm a songwriter, I'm a vocal producer, I am an artist.
Wonderful, thank you. Shelley, let's move on to you. Welcome.
Thank you. I am a coach also for actors here in LA, and I have worked as a corporate coach for public speaking, and I'm an actress. I have been in a couple of films lately. If you saw Sorry to Bother You, I'm in that. Is on the right side of politics. And another film called Green is Gold. So that's lately. And Green is Gold, both of them, Boots Riley was in my class when I lived in the Bay Area. And Green is Gold is award-winning, won the Los Angeles Film Festival about 5 years ago. So both of those directors were in my class, and that was fun for me. I am a cult survivor from a Gurdjieff group, if any of you know Gurdjieff, and I was over 15 years of my early life, so I've been recovering from it ever since. And I'm so taken with Wendy and your intro, because I'm with artists. I'm working with people who would be called influencers. All kinds of people are actors nowadays. And so it's really interesting for me to, many of them have an artistic temperament and don't even know that they're artists. All they do is, so a big part of my work is giving young people, an understanding of everything that Michelle just described. So yeah, so that's what I do. And the other sexy thing I can drop is I did work with Shia LaBeouf all of 2018 and 19. He was trying to do a something in South Central with the community. It ended up being a bunch of actors from Hollywood going down to South Central to be with him. But that was a real eye opener because I moved here 7 years ago. So I moved here when I was older, and so it's been in a minute for me to get my footing with the industry. So that was a intensive course working with him. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Tina, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Tina Suka, and first of all, I'm very thankful to be on this chat with all of you accomplished women. I think it's pretty amazing. I come from not really the creative side, but more of the admin executive side. I'm in the live music business, really running venues and producing, putting on concerts, promoting concerts. So I have a little bit of a different perspective. I'm currently in Chicago, but I am Los Angeles, have a house in Los Angeles. We're just riding out this time, trying to wait for live events to come back. But I've also, just by the nature of what I do, I've worked with a lot of artists, but I took a brief break from my live event business really to go out on the road as Prince's personal assistant on the musicology tour. So got a great amount of experience and some great insight. So would love to share that with you as we go along.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And that was also what I loved about bringing all three of you here, because, you know, Struktur event started in the design world, and it was really design and business, but we brought a lot of, you know, musicians and radio personalities and other types of artists and people in to really inform us. And then we really started to grow more, and to have, I really wanted to expand into more music, performance, and other types of art. And the commonalities between all the artists were so spot on. And one of the people, I mean, Shelley was first on my list when I thought about this topic, because we've had her at Struktur event before. And she had come in, you know, you came in and worked with the North Face to work with some of the designers there, and had done that, you know, across business. But to have also, you know, acting, singing, business, music, all of those in here is really important. An important perspective for me and for our audience as well. So I thought it was a really well-rounded group, and I'm really excited to have you all here. Now, with that introduction, I wanted to move into a little bit. First, I want to start with why. I want to go back to the beginning of, you know, when you started out. And, you know, maybe Wendy, we'll start with you on this one. Yeah, I'm just going to kind of move it around and start with different people, but just to hear a little bit about why you started. I don't know if you started specifically singing or performing or whatnot, but why? What was your reason for starting there? And
Everything you said about how an artist is wired. So I completely agree. You know, the artist circle, I discovered a lot of people think the artist circle is not for them because people who are artists don't identify as artists, and people who are creative don't think of themselves as creative. I have always identified myself as an artist. Like, that's my number one archetype. And in everything I do, if it's cooking, it's like I'm artistic. And what you said, how you're wired. I was 3 years old and I pointed to a record and said, I want to do what she's doing. You know, I loved music. I was always singing. You know, it became a rule in the house, no singing at the table, because I just was always singing. And I still am. You know, I'll be out and about, grocery shopping, whatever, and people are like, oh, nice voice. And I'm like, oh, was I singing? Like, of course I am. I don't understand when people go to concerts that they're not up on their feet and dancing like I am. I'm like, how do you not move to this music? With my earplugs in, no less, because it's too loud.
Right, of course. You have to preserve our ears here.
Yeah. So yes, I started working as an actor and a performer and a singer when I was 8. So I started working professionally when I was 8. From the time I was a little kid, of course, I was doing school stuff and community stuff. But as a kid, I started doing TV and commercials. You know, I started writing. I wrote my first song when I was 9. It wasn't a great song, but I can still sing the hook. It wasn't terrible.
But you did it.
And so yeah, so I started pursuing being a recording artist young. I went to NYU for acting. I was always an actor as well. I didn't realize till later that if you ask me what Meisner is, I don't know, except that I'm aware that I use a lot of it in the work I do working with people. Life is an improv. Say yes. Like that is something I encourage everyone to do. Like from improv training, improv is about say yes to the premise and then contribute to it, right? And I think that's life. Say yes to adventures and then how do I bring myself to it? You know, if you're working with a team, ooh, someone has an idea. The worst thing we can do in a co-writing session in any creative is say no to someone. Just you're going to shut down their creativity. You're going to shut down their flow. So how can we say yes and then you know when we get on the same page, we're going to run with that thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started as an artist. I started training with my vocal teacher and then at NYU, my colleagues who all turned into like later they're on SNL now. Mike Block, like, you know, people, my friend is a TV and film director now. They started asking me, hey, you can sing. Can you help us? Like, we're doing a singing thing in our comedy bit. So I actually started helping people when I was about 17, just helping out my friends, you know, well, I'll do that. Oh, you want to need vocal arrangements? Sure. But my coach, who's a very famous coach for voice, he invited me to teach. And I was about 19, 20 at the time. And I thought, I don't know how to teach. And he said, sure you do. You know how I helped you. You can help others. This can be your gig while you're developing your, you know, like this can be your income, right? You said as musicians, I was not surprised at that flip, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And basically I discovered very quickly how much I loved coaching. I've never stopped singing. I co-write and write with others. I've been a music director for a film and we wrote 11 original songs. I sang on one of them. I'm never going to not sing, but I'm here to use my voice, and I found that empowering others to use their voice is really fulfilling for me. You know, if beautiful day outside, or, you know, I've traveled around the world. I've trained voice teachers around the world. I was the founder of SLS, one of the founders. And, you know, after a long flight, get off a plane, go do a full day workshop, I'm jazzed, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is where you're putting your energy, not putting yourself on tour. So you love this.
Yeah. Feeding, that's when you like feed off of it.
Yeah.
And you're doing that thing that you love. So
yeah. So I realized very quickly, this is where my energy is going. I love empowering others. I want to help them not avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I experienced as an artist, which was I started not liking my job as an artist. I hated singing. Why do I not like music? How come I sound so bad? Which became the footstone for the foundation that I teach, which is to empower artists to love what they do and curate a life they love, not one that is serving everyone else, but serves you first, and isn't about being validated. It isn't about being good. I really help. It's about, you know, really actually killing the perfectionist so that you can take risks. And again, it applies to everybody. If you're in a corporate job and you have a task to do, in order to, I'm going to put in quotes, think outside the box, to be innovative, you need to be authentic. You need to put your work into the task, right? Even given a structure. So, you know, I wrote a permission slip to an artist I was working with today, and it really said, you have permission to beep up. I don't know, can I say that in here? You can fuck up.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, here's your permission slip, because that's what we need. And so my course as an artist, where I did lose my joy, and I really didn't, I was like, well, how come I got off track? And it was training did it to me, education did it to me, cultural, you know, people telling me what I'm supposed to be, not be. And so I was like, an artist is a trailblazer. I need to help artists be empowered with who they are and have their voice. And so my course foundation is all about that, burning the perfectionism, anchoring to your joy, finding your vision.
It sounds like, which is something I want to talk about in the second half, especially, is that you had a very supportive environment to do so too, as growing up. But yeah, I do want to talk about that because that factors into a lot of things here as well. Now, Shelley, how was your beginning? Was it similar? Like, did you have that support, or did you have more challenges? What I thought was interesting, Shelley, I was looking into the fact that you studied with Lee Strasberg, and we've talked about that before. And I actually didn't really connect to who Lee Strasberg was until I really dug into it and realized that he was Hyman Roth in Godfather 2, one of my favorite movies. And as I dug more into it, like, well, oh yeah, then he's trained so many amazing actors out there. In fact, that Al Pacino talked him into taking that role and whatnot. Those are little details I didn't know at first.
In details.
They're big details. They're very big details. But yeah, how was your beginning? How'd you get into that?
Well, I'd like to jump off of what you just said, just for the listeners, that I'm just so enchanted with Wendy and everything she said. That it's kind of the spirit of where she's coming from is ditto for me, except the environment around the actor studio and Lee Strasberg was so patriarchal. I don't
Very
even know.
much like business.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think, in a nutshell, I'm going to be really bold here. What my work is founded on, and I will go to the origin briefly, but is that both Stanislavski and Lee Strasberg had a strong intuition that in our day-to-day lives, we wear a mask, a persona. And that all the action in terms of grabbing an audience, especially with drama where you have no dance or music, all of the action is happening underneath that mask. And so that's, in a nutshell, what is method acting? It means you are relating to other people right here and now in this moment from what's underneath that mask. And that's very exciting, because most people who wouldn't want to look so deeply into things, everybody feels good when they can not be that mask and just be their own essence. So this whole patriarchal thing that is Strasberg and method acting, it's really the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And that, what are we doing? We are all in a left hemisphere Western culture. And the direction and the rewards in our culture are very heavy on the left hemisphere quantitative accomplishments. And so a lot of people that want to achieve something in the arts, and that are artists, they have oriented themselves and aligned themselves so strongly with the rewards, especially young people, with the reward system, that they don't even listen to the parts of them that would be the right hemisphere. In other words, the intuitive and relational part.
The feminine.
So yes, the feminine.
Right.
Yes. So I am bringing a lot of emphasis to the toxic masculinity that is built into what is known as method acting. And so that's a big part. And also a term that I think I've coined is called outsourcing your authority. And I really point out to people when they don't have their vitality, because their core desire is to achieve something, to prove something to somebody in 7th grade. They outsource their authority to somebody who at my age is probably dead already, and it still goes on. And so especially for women, taking your authority back into yourself, but it's everybody. But I first I first, I didn't, I was not an academic person ever. I was 8 years old. I'm from Michigan, Detroit, and I was raised there the whole till I was 17. But when I was 8, my family, I had a cousin getting married in New York City, and this little play called The Miracle Worker was on Broadway.
Oh, love that.
I had never seen a play, and my family probably just thought, well, there's a little girl in it, so we could bring. I was 8 years old at the time, and they brought me to see The Miracle Worker, and I was shivering in my chair from the beauty of it, from the meaning of it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there as I'm sitting here today. I remember my family, they liked the evening, but they were not in a sweat like I was. And so that was it. That was it. And then I wasn't able to, in high school, I did a little acting, but I was maybe too Jewish looking to be, in Oklahoma. So,
so the Miracle Worker, for people who don't know, the Miracle Worker, because I saw the film, is
that's the play I saw. That's the same actors.
Annie Sullivan, who was the teacher of Helen Keller. Really, yes. And I read the book. I read her book as well. Very, very, very inspirational for girls. Yeah. So
colossal. Yes. So I did. I come from a working class. My father had a factory, and in Detroit, no one around me, but they basically saw me, if anyone from the Midwest is listening, as a liability. Like, oh my God, what is she going to do? Or what's, so I went to Emerson College for 2 years in Boston. And then I realized that I needed to be in New York because I didn't have any mentors. And in New York, I went to a place called Circle in the Square.
Me too.
You went to Circle?
I went to Circle.
You did not.
I did.
Oh, that's crazy.
See?
You have Terry. What's her last name? Terry.
And my family is all from Detroit.
Get out.
I love it.
Why the enchantment there too? Because we have these connections we don't always know, and that's
crazy.
Yeah.
So what's her name? I'm so shamefully I forget her name. We had to have the same teacher because she was there like forever.
Amazing.
Terry and Jackie. Jackie and Terry, they taught like the sense memory stuff. Anyway, I had Estelle Parsons when I went there. And so here I was, and I had an Oscar-winning actress, like with a fresh Oscar, that was my teacher. So coming from Detroit, from my background, to even be in the room breathing the same air with a person like that was woo. And then we had a lot of other, looking back on it, really cool teachers. And I worked with Irene Pappas, if you've ever seen Zorba the Greek, the actress from that. She was not a teacher there, but she influenced me tremendously as a young person. So
you had a lot of like you said, kind of inspiration and mentor available there.
Yeah, but Estelle Parsons even made fun of us in our first day. She said, "Why are you studying with me? Lee is still alive. Go study with Lee." Mm-hmm. So that Lee, meaning Lee Strasberg, and that is truly why I went down to the first day of class. The teacher said, "Go somewhere else." So I was going to both places at the same time.
Okay.
And I would skip my classes at Circle in the Square to go study with Lee Strasberg. But that's another story. But I guess I had a girl. Some of the exciting things in class, and this is the biggest one of name dropping kind, is this Bulgarian supermodel that was taking Lee Strasberg's class asked me if I wanted to model myself for live model for Salvador Dali. And I did. It's a little bit longer story, but it was a Me Too thing.
We'll do another show for that one. Yeah.
Yes, he didn't touch me. He didn't, but it was very Me Too. I did it about 3-4 times. And that, again, I won't go into it. And then I met through another person in my class, a famous, at the time, actress and still now, Ellen Burstyn.
Oh, yeah.
And she began mentoring me. And I was kind of on my way, you know. And then Ellen Burstyn told me about Gurdjieff, and I ended up in a cult for 15 years. Not unlike The Vow. So that kind of derailed me for a little minute.
Yeah.
But those are kind of the highlights of my beginning. And
like the beginning to that point. And then after that, yeah, that's going to be.
Yeah, I think though that I came of age in the 70s. I was in New York all of the 70s, and the misogyny and you know what my body went through being there. You know, that's a big part of being an artist for a woman, at least for me at that time, was sorting out the if you've ever heard that talk by Audre Lorde of your erotic as your vitality. And at that time, as in my youth, you were just immediately, the wires were crossed. You know, you just couldn't be that vibrant erotic person without immediately being objectified in some way right away. So anyway, in the that was part of the obstacle course that I had to go over. But right now I love helping young women. I love helping men in their wholeness. I work with a lot of young people, and as you can hear from maybe the way I describe things, I take a lot of pleasure in saving them time.
And that's what I want to dig into that when we talk about the artist on the other half too, for sure. Like, I think the obstacle piece, that's where I think a lot of that comes in the beginning. And I want to talk a little bit then hear from Tina on some of, because I'm sure, Tina, I want to hear how you got into the music industry, or how you started, because I'm sure you had interesting obstacles too, because it's such also, not to make it focused on this, but it's a very male dominated industry as well. But I want to hear, how did you get started?
Yeah, definitely. I'm from the Midwest, outside of Chicago.
You're all from there.
Sorry?
You're all from there. I did not.
Yeah, all from the Midwest. So
I'm from Cali.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you know, growing up, I loved music. Same thing where if you find something like Shelley went and saw The Miracle Worker, I remember distinctly the first time hearing the Beatles. And again, I was outside of that age group. My parents were not fans. They were already married with children by the time the Beatles came out. So I became obsessed, and I couldn't understand where this magic came from. I knew I didn't possess any of that magic, but I just needed to be near it. And I loved all kinds of music, but particularly that was a band that I was obsessed with from the time I was 5. Today, I'm still obsessed. So that was the reason I wanted to get into the business. I didn't really feel like I had a talent, but I wanted to be near that magic. Like when you're a great actor or an actress and you're like, I need to be near that, because you somehow, I don't know if I thought I would absorb some of it or something, but it's the whole reason I got into the business. And growing up in the Midwest and like a working class family, your best bet was, you know, go get a job with the post office, go do this. And I was like, California so I can possibly hang out with the Beatles. So I started off as a receptionist. And again, I think until recently, I was pretty naive about um, that what was happening to us women in the music business, again, not to turn it into that, but was also happening to other creatives, other women who were creative. Took a long time to recognize that. I always felt like because they were so magical to me that they somehow escaped what had happened to a lot of us women who were working in the business. Like, yeah, you become objectified, you want to get into the business, okay, like the amount of things that you put up with, the abuse.
Right.
My friends, to myself, to our, yeah. But that being said, that's how I got in, started off as a receptionist and just worked my way up. And I started taking classes at school, but being on the live side of things, I worked at the Greek Theater and at the time Pacific Amphitheater down in Orange County, and the Fonda Theater. So there was constant music happening, which I was thrilled. I remember I wrote home when I got my first laminate to go out. And I stopped taking classes. You could no longer take classes at night. You couldn't go on the weekends. There was no such thing as online. So
Yeah, right.
it really went to the wayside. And I'm finding that after this pandemic, it's now hurting me, which is weird because of a division of Live Nation. So
Yeah.
I'm finding it to be a bit challenging. But yeah, I just wanted to be near people who were creative, and I got to hang out with so many amazing, not just artists, but actors and actresses. And there was always to me magic. And I just wanted to be the person that allowed them to be creative. I would do all the other stuff that just allowed them to be who they were as long as I could be near it. So it's a little perspective from where you guys are coming from.
But is that how you got into being a artist relations in your work then? Because you wanted to be, you wanted that.
I wanted that, and I found that I recognized a lot of people that I'd throw out random things that for someone my age, people would be like, how do you know that? I knew a lot of producers and a lot of people from the studio side of things. I read all the credits and albums, and then I got to know people. I'd recognize old people from bands. I'd be like, well, there's somebody from Paul Revere and the Raiders, or from the Grassroots, and people would be like, what? Like, one of the guys in the Grassroots actually became a very famous manager of other artists. So it was the more that people recognized that I was truly into it and I could talk music with musicians, that it kind of just brought me into that side of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Very cool.
And what is it that you loved about, we talk about being very drawn to an artist like the Beatles, and that just sparked something, but can you articulate what that was that you loved being around with the artists at that early age?
Yeah, I think it is feeling like whatever they are transmitting to us here on Earth is coming from some other place. It's like it's coming from out of the ether, and they're truly tuned into something. And I think just capturing what, the emotions of so many things that we go through as humans. And right, that's what artistry is all about, even from the acting side or the artistic drawing, painting side, photography. It's like you're capturing moments and really, it's like the essence of a human being. You're capturing a moment in time. And I think I just understood that it's just something that you truly have a gift when you can do that. Of course, expanded into other artists that I love, but that true being obsessed with just listening all night with headphones on, saying, how did they come up with that? Like, what, putting these musical things together. As a 5-year-old, I distinctly remember saying to my sisters who are older, being in a car and hearing Elton John's Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. And saying, people just need to stop. And they were saying, what do you mean stop? And I'm like, I was afraid that all the good ideas were going to come out, and all the great music and art, and that when I was older, I wouldn't have anything to enjoy, because in my little head, it was like finite. And then to realize it just goes on forever, and people will continually create. Just still to this day gives me goosebumps. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's something like working as a designer and an artist. I always, I so appreciated the people that I worked with who were like, I'm here to support you. I'm here, like the, developers and whatnot, who were like, I have my job I do, I want to support your vision. And I remember thinking like, oh my, because not all of them were like that. There were a few people, and it was like, oh my God, thank you. And they were so good at their job. It allowed me to do my job. But then there were the people who were always feel like they're kind of trying to break you down a little bit or whatnot. So, that relationship for an artist, and working with them is so important, because it's important to have people who get you and understand you.
And I think there's a fine line in the music business, and I don't know if this happens in others, where some of these executives start to feel like they're the star.
Right. Yes.
It's a problem, a lot of misogyny in that as well, about some of the guys like living their lives as though they're the ones. And it's like, without them, we wouldn't have our job. I wouldn't have my house without the artists. I wouldn't have, the nice things I have. So sometimes people in our business forget that.
It happens in other fields too. So absolutely. I want to move into Wendy. I'd love to talk, kind of building on that, that relationship, like, growing into working with others, and that, one of the things I kind of wanted to, this segues into, is that idea of, success, notoriety, credit, collaboration, sharing that with people. That's something you have, obviously we have experience with, and talking about that, sharing that spotlight with people.
I think I love collaborating. Like I said, I love elevating people and empowering people. And I love working with good people. Like, this panel is awesome as we're relating to each other. And yes, and Tina, you literally just described the artist's job and your thrill at being the audience member, the receiver of that emotional ride. That's why we have music. That's why we have any art, because, like, as a creator, I'm also a receiver, right? If I'm watching a movie and I start noticing technical things, or the actor's crying and I'm not, I'm like, this is a bad movie. I don't want to watch you cry. I want to cry. So, and there's a million reasons why that happens. Script, directing, editing. Like, it's not just one element. But that's what, like, creativity is collaboration. And I think more than ever. And part of this, well, I'm going to say more than ever. That's probably not true. Because if we look historically, the Impressionists became successful because they worked together. Like, they actually started their own art show because they couldn't get into the cool kids one, right? Or the established one. So the truth is that artists succeed when they do work together and support each other. I know from the wonderful HBO documentary about Spielberg, there are 5 directors, that Lucas and Spielberg, and they all hung out, knew each other, showed each other their work. They got better because of each other. So I personally, I love collaborating. I love the whole point of songwriting, co-writing. I write by myself. I write lyrics, melody, composition. And I love doing that. But if I'm writing with someone else, I go somewhere, I climb a mountain, I create something I would never have done alone because of the ping pong activity.
Yeah.
And I love that process. I love the ping pong. So I think that in order to collaborate, we need to be vulnerable. In order to collaborate, we need to leave our masks, as Shelley mentioned, our egos outside the door. I've definitely been told, when I write with people, I've been told, oh, this is like the most fun I've had writing, or this is the most honest song I've ever written. And the why of that is often because people come into the room and they're like, okay, we want to write a hit for the artist. We want our song to be the single. Let's be clever. Right. And I'm just like, let's talk. Like, I hang out, we talk. What's going on in your life? And while I basically interview them, I then write down 3. I'm typing away and I've got 3 song ideas and some hooks, and some of it came straight from what they said, and some of it's what they've said, and then it inspires me. And so it's about being real with each other.
Yeah.
And I know for artists, a lot of artists, and it depends. Like, it depends where someone is in their journey and where they are in their experience, and then what they need. A lot of artists, especially in music, you need to break through. They used to be all gatekeepers, right? Everything, including acting, actually. You can make your own YouTube show now. So a lot of the gatekeeping is gone, but obviously not all of it. Yeah. But a lot of times people are hoping someone will I got to work with a Grammy-winning producer because they're going to make me successful. Mm-hmm. Which is why people fall into the pitfalls of being taken advantage of.
Right.
You know, this is a business of dreams, and so there are some people who prey on that. And you need to find genuine people, which I've been told over and over, especially in LA, it's hard to meet genuine people. I'm like, come into my circle. They are genuine. They won't stick around me if they're not. Like,
Right.
I can't, I don't do small talk. But in that case, this is where I say collaboration and chemistry is so important. Is, a young artist I work with, she had an opportunity to work with a big major. I actually introduced her one producer, and then she had an opportunity to work with another, Grammy-winning producer. And I gave her some tips before she went in. I was like, "Don't be afraid to say no. Speak your mind. You got to let that producer know what lane you're in. Like, and you might have a great time. You might find that the producer is really set in their ways and not really collaborating with you. Like, and then we talked after, and they said it was a terrible experience. Like, they just did their thing and wanted me to basically kind of sing on their thing in their style, and I have a totally different vibe. Well, they ended up meeting, literally, they were going to USC at the time. They met a person in their program down the hall, and they spent time together, hanging out, making music. And the music that got her in magazines and got her on charts and started her career. She left school because she's like, my career is happening. I'm going to go put my energy into it. Were all the ones she created with her friend down the hall who respected her, admired her, listened. I left a project, first day of the project, working with multi-Grammy winning producer. I was brought in to coach, vocal produce, and co-write. And the first day, I would bring ideas, and they literally, first word out their mouth was no, no, no. So I said, "Hey, can we have a conversation in the other room?" It's like, so you keep saying no to all my ideas. And as a creative, and you brought me into songwrite. So if you're saying no, I'm not going to get a chance to write. But if you say no, eventually you're just going to shut me down, and then I don't need to be here.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be aware that that's happening. And he said, with all his ego, "Oh, no, I totally want your ideas. Just we just got to do mine first." So that project didn't last.
Right.
Because again, collaboration, if you're being shut down, if you're not respected, there is no collaboration. Yeah. So it's so important to work with people that respect you, admire you. Another artist I work with, very gently I was talking to them about their team, the band particularly, but also their team. And again, it's not my place to tell anyone. I don't have all the answers. If you ask me, will I make it? I'm like, please don't give me that power. I don't have it. Right. No one should tell you you can make it or not, ever. But I pointed out and was kind of slowly having talks about it, and I'm going to say gently hinting, because it's not for me to say fire your band. Right. But I was helping him to see that everyone there is a hired player. And and they came to me saying, "I'm struggling with my producer." And I was like, you need to find people who respect you. Yeah. And sometimes, especially for artists, when you can perform in front of your family and not care, you are winning. People who know you, have a history with you, they have an idea of who you are. Yeah. Fans don't. Fans know what you give them. Right? So it's so sometimes that relationship, your best friend from a long time can absolutely be your team. Or it's oh, they know who you are from the past, and they don't see the artist that you are or the vision you have. And collaboration is about chemistry, respect, trust, openness, yes and.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to quickly talk about that with Shelley on some collaboration, because you've done some as well. And Shelley, we've got just a couple minutes on that one, then we've got to move on to a poll that's going to move us into a conversation that I want to do with Tina. But yeah, just some quick stuff on collaboration there to add to that, because you've done some really great collabs in a couple of different ways. So what will you add to that?
Well, which ones do you have in mind?
Well, I was going to let you talk about the ones you wanted to. Well, because you've done a few. I mean, I'll just kind of say to what Wendy was talking about in terms of, maybe one that was challenging or one that really worked. Quick examples of those.
Right now I'm working with a lot of actors who are making movies, and I'm kind of like a plastic surgeon. Like, they don't really want people to know that I'm helping them. So
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
it's not a secret, but it's not the most significant one was a movie called The Tax Collector, and my friend and student and client, Bobby Soto, was the star of this movie with Shia LaBeouf. So he had never made a movie like that before, Bobby. And then he comes, at first I thought, are you kidding me? You're playing opposite Shia LaBeouf in this, and he's actually the lead. And so that was really something he was here, we would sit down for 8 hours at a time, me and Bobby, like the time would just be like this. And we would work out, beat by beat things. I would make a menu. So that's a lot of actors think there's going to be one answer to how they're going to do it great. And I said, well, let's find a menu of like 3 to 5 things that you might bring in this moment. And more recently, I coached a young woman, which she said she doesn't mind me to say, her show is premiering tonight. It's called Lion, MC, and her name is Sulem Calderon. And I asked her, if you were talking to a 12-year-old, what would you say you got out of this coaching that you wouldn't have had? She said, I've realized that the script is the surfboard and that I am the surfer. And I just love that. I've been quoting it. And that's just,
yes.
So that's a little example of my current day. And at 10 o'clock tonight, if you want to see Mayans MC, you'll see.
Where can we see it? Where can we see it?
It's on FX tonight, and then tomorrow it starts being on Hulu.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Season 3 of Mayans MC.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, I want to move on right now and quickly do a poll, which will kind of lead into some new discussion here. I think Karen's going to bring that up for us. So the audience gets to take part in the poll, and I think we all do too. Maybe we don't. I can't remember. I think we do. Yeah. So 3 questions. And no, we don't. I just get to look at it. I always forget about this. Think about it.
All right. Fine.
Do you identify as an artist? Yes, no, not sure. And I love the second one. What were you raised to believe? It says a lot about us. That's why I was asking Wendy about being in a supportive environment.
That's so important though, because I think there's a mix of like, people who had no support work their butts off and succeed because they're like, I got nothing to lose, or I have nothing else, so I'm going to go for it. Yeah. Too supportive obviously doesn't give anybody like that hunger and striving. So, but I was very fortunate. I was fortunate that I was able to study voice and pursue my career, skip school, take dance class. Like my life, became the things I was able to do. So very fortunate for that.
And then how about this? What do you find working with artists to be? I know a lot of my old coworkers and would have certain things to say about that. So.
So many things.
All right. Are we done yet there, Karen? I want to see what the results are. But I have no control over this, so there we go. Okay, here's our answers. Whoa, we have a lot of artists here. Yes, I love it. And the not sures, that's the kind of place I really like. Okay, that's where we want to focus there. Were you raised to believe that artists should always have something to fall back on or can never make a good living from their art? Those are big ones that I talk with a lot of people about. I know my own family, my parents kind of struggled in that area of My mom actually went back and became a painter in her late 40s, and she's now
Amazing.
a professional painter in her 70s.
Oh,
She's a huge inspiration to me. Yeah. She thinks she's on the call on this episode too. And do you find working with artists to be exciting and inspiring? Because we have a lot of artists here. That's good. Interesting, fun, and challenging, frustrating. Cool. Okay. I want to take that interesting information and talk with Tina about your experience in working with the artist Prince. You can talk with others as well, but obviously that's a huge experience there. Share with us what I know you told me a little bit about how that came to be. If you just kind of get us up to speed there, how you got to work with him, and then mostly like what it was like to work with him, challenges and the beauties of that.
Sure. Yeah. It came to be, I was actually working at Sunset Strip, House of Blues in the heyday, and I was artist relations. So I had a lot of interaction with his crew, but not really with him directly.
Mhm.
But there came a time when a friend of mine from a label was in the studio with him, and he was getting ready. He was finishing up Musicology, if anybody's familiar with that album. And he was saying, I need someone to go on the road. He didn't have a manager or an agent. It's like, I need someone to come on the road with me who is professional, that, would be like a right-hand person. And my friend said, I have exactly the person. So she said, my friend who works at House of Blues. And he had already eyed me for that, I think, because he had said, little blonde girl, right? And she said yes. And so he called me to the studio that night, and I had an interview. I put on a suit because my friend said that's what he likes professional. And he sat on a big tall bar stool and interviewed me down in a low chair, which I thought was really funny. We are the same height. And in fact, a few times I tried on his Gucci tuxedos and things just to make sure that they fit. Although I'm heavier than he was because he was so thin. But yeah, and so I ended up going on. We worked together for a little bit. I heard he was difficult. So from my perspective, because of my love of other things in high school, I missed out on Prince and Madonna. I was so obsessed with the Beatles that I was like, yeah. So when I met him, I truly wasn't like in awe. My friends were freaking out. I was like, okay, yeah, Prince, great, whatever. It would be fun to go on the road. I've never done that. So we started working a little bit together, and I said, why don't you see if I like you and if you like me? And my friend was in the studio was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that to Prince. But again, I wasn't that impressed. So we started doing some things together, and he was getting ready to go on the road. He's like, are you in or are you out? Which meant giving up my job with all the securities I had with that. And I said, I'm in. So we went to Nevada up in Tahoe to rehearse for 10 days. And everything's set up, all the staging and equipment. And I see him, I start hearing him talk to the musicians that are out on the road. And he goes out and he plays this insane guitar solo that I lost my mind. I suddenly realized, oh my God, who am I working for? And so I went, and then he was telling the other musicians, like, no, can you do it like this? He was on the drums, he was on the keyboard, he played horns. I was like, what is happening here? And I went back to call my best friend who was still working at House of Blues. And I was like, oh my God, I totally get it. And like right now, as I'm saying it, I kind of have some hair standing up on my arm sort of thing. And I thought, I cannot believe that I've missed out. So from that point on, I was trying to get some of his music because I hadn't really listened to it. Mm-hmm. And each day blew my mind more and more. We went, when we were getting ready to launch for the first show, the first night, he told me to bring a pen and paper, and he said, we're going to talk lighting. And Michelle, I told you this story before, but so we go out and we sit out in the seats, and in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know lighting. I never said I knew lighting. Did somebody tell him I know lighting? Like my head's going a million miles an hour. And we sat down, and in his head, he knew the entire show. He had me just write down like, okay, diamonds and pearls, when this happens, magenta lights, then comes down the pearls. And then from start to finish, and this is kind of why I think when you guys were talking about believing in yourself and having a vision, and Wendy, you can't tell an artist whether or not they're going to make it. I think some people who just, not to be too Dr. Wayne Diary about it, but I think when you just know, and you
100%.
push forward, even when other people tell you you're crap or you're what. I mean, I was at a show where Prince got things thrown at him when he opened up for the Rolling Stones. So
Oh yeah.
he just pushed on. So he
You
has,
do know, Tina, you do know when you see an artist, like they've got it. And
yes,
there's all kinds of artists in the world. There's ways to make a living as an artist at all kinds of ways. But the kind of artist you're talking about, and Prince is one of a kind. But when someone has that, they say it's not it's what's the word, unmistakable. And Prince is honestly is the greatest live performer I've ever seen in my life, twice. Greatest
yeah.
performer ever.
And you just think, and it makes me think about other artists. Don't ever he had people tell him that he wasn't going to be good enough and that nobody would want to, and he just pushed through it. So it was truly an incredible experience to see that kind of talent. I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when, again, they were giving a tribute to George Harrison, and that insane guitar solo he did of "While My Guitar Gently Weeps." He had everyone believing he wasn't going to do it, and in his head, he already had the whole thing, the falling back, having his guitar tech catching him, pushing him back up on the stage. Just every moment with him was a pleasure. And I think my biggest so I took him through the drop of the new album. He had a wife that we were really, she's a bit passive aggressive. And I think a lot of people know we're now very friendly, but I just thought it's time for me to go. I don't know if this gig is really for me, but come to a few years later, I'm working as the general manager at the Forum, and the Foo Fighters are playing, and great rock venue. This is before the renovations. And so I get a call saying Prince would like to come down to the Forum. Can he park his car in the production tunnel? And which was against fire marshal rules, by the way. But I said, tell Prince he's welcome in the building anytime. And he goes, do you know him? And I said, tell him Tina said hi. So we started our friendship back up. We had all sorts of great plans, and I don't want to go on too much, but it really is, again, the privilege of being with someone with that kind of vision. Our meetings where he would come hang out in my office and everyone would freak out led to the 21 nights that he did at the Forum. Sadly, we were going to build like a modern day Cotton Club where he wanted all these Black artists and poets and painters and just all these collaborative efforts, especially amongst Black musicians. We had talked about turning that old Forum Club into that. And we just never got to do that. But yeah, it was the privilege of a lifetime. And I mean, I think when you're an artist, if you just push through the negative and the things that people are saying, you really, I mean, I know he was a one of a kind, but I feel privileged to have had that experience.
That's some of the things that I want to talk about there. Prince has been popping up a lot as I've been focusing on art, he's been popping up a lot. And one of the things that I heard was the founder of Bandcamp had said he heard Prince say, music is healing. And that was what prompted him to start Bandcamp. And I like that really speaks so much to who Prince was as an artist. That it's all about the healing, that piece. So in the time that we have, because I do want to have some room for questions and stuff too, but I want to talk a little bit about, open it up and let any of you talk about challenges. Being an artist, working with artists, just anything that we want to say quickly in about 10 minutes that we have here before some questions. But I want to talk about the challenges that we have as artists, because we can clearly see that it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it's so important to us to work with them, to be them. But what are some of our challenges? What are some of the rough spots? What are we not so great at dealing with?
Well, I think, Tina, what you just said about believing in yourself. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the diagram of like self-doubt and something else, and then where it overlays and where an artist lives. And I think that learning to trust in yourself and hold to your vision. I think that artists who last, who actually make it through, 7 to 10 years to discover your voice as an artist. And that's probably true in any industry. But learning to go from, I wasn't listening to myself. I was listening to what everyone else told me. I was young. And we go through the hard knocks in order to strengthen ourselves, right? And get that fortitude. So I think that it's finding the strength and the ability to keep listening to ourselves especially when culture and social media and everything is bombarding you from the outside of who you should be, what you should be, how you should be. It's notorious historically that an artist gets signed, they love the demo, we love who you are, and then they want to reproduce everything differently.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you love who I am, but you want to change everything about me. So, I think that that's a big one is finding your core people that really support you and that reflect honestly with you, and finding the ways to keep going back to yourself and finding that strength.
Or even finding yourself to begin with. I mean, Shelley, we talked a bit about that when you came and worked with designers at the North Face and other companies and stuff. And you've talked about, tell us a little bit about what you felt there, because I think there were some things that resonated that you saw from the outside that people like me felt from the inside. We didn't quite realize.
Yeah, I just want to say, being a mother, just put that there. We can circle back round to it. But my experience working with people in corporate environments is that and especially with designers, the young people who are the designers are getting a mixed message from the corporate structure. And they're young, some of the designers at North Face are 26, 27. They are artists, my God. And they're doing the right thing, getting a regular job with a pension or whatever.
No pension anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
Health and
benefits.
So, when I would ask people, well, what do you think, or what are you feeling now? Men and women would just be close to tears at just being asked to express themselves about what they think in those corporate walls. And so I was brought in for the sales team, basically for people who really work with their hands. I also worked for a bank for the genius math department people. And in both cases, the introspective nature of being an artist was not invited to when they create stuff, and then they have to interface with the business people. And so they brought in me to make these people have a little more sauce, secret sauce around how they presented. And so that was
there was a little different kind of things there where you want to kind of dig in and with the artist, but at the same time you also have a job to do to provide the exterior piece as well. So
yes, and the fear of many designers that they were not public speakers, because it was in this time of PowerPoint presentations and all this, and they felt that was upstaging their art and who the work they do with their hands. And so they just felt they were disposable. And so talking to them and getting them reconnected to what is meaning, in other words, if they tapped into what is meaningful for them, then they were giving off a vibe that was not wanted at that corporate environment.
Yep.
And that's the message.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
The good news is that it's changing right now. That's a good news. Probably from just even last year, things are changing.
How so? How are you seeing that?
I'm seeing that, well, especially in my business with it was all, run by men, right? So, and everything was very hardcore. You can have no emotion. There's, very dog eat dog. You will be fired if you show any emotion. And I know people who have been fired for crying or standing their ground. And now I feel like with not just Me Too, but also what has happened with Black Lives Matter and people matter, I think it's changing. And it's small nuances, but I can see it already happening on the Zoom calls and things that I've been on, and talking about what it's going to be like when we return. And people actually standing up, men actually standing up for other women and my say their opinion. So I'm hoping that that is changes with creatives as well. Like, you know, for people to have a voice. I just somehow I can't quite put my finger on, I can't articulate it, but I can feel the shift happening, and it's makes me happy. It's a truly positive thing.
We have so many good shifts happening, I think, but we'll have to see how they kind of play out. Like, we have a question here that I want to get to that says, I guess this is for anybody. How much of the artist is an expression of personal therapy, conscious or unconscious? How much of the artist is an expression of personal therapy?
That's a good question.
Tackle that?
Well, yeah, please. Shelley.
I would just say watch Allen versus Pharaoh about Woody Allen. And
Oh, that just came on.
that really unpacks that question. But that's
Definitive answer. You know, you said music is healing. I mean, that is 100% scientifically true, that sound is healing. You can actually break up kidney stones with sound waves. Like, all music is healing. And art, again, like for me, the artist's job, any art, is to take your voice, your message, your trauma, your hurt, take something painful and turn it into something beautiful that affects other people. So I do think a lot of it is conscious or unconscious. Like, when someone has something to say, there's a stirring that I need to say this in the world. I have to get this off. So I think some of it is definitely unconscious, but it is. When I ask artists, one of the reasons why they make music is that it's therapeutic. The experience of singing is therapeutic. It is healing. And I think the more conscious we can be, you know, you talked about the mask, and most human beings are walking around reacting to the world from our hurts and our belief systems and our experiences from age 8 to 13. And so you get people in their 40s yelling at someone in an office space because they're actually reacting from their 8-year-old self, right? But healing those things, and art does this. Creativity is the space to heal it. It's the safest space. You're going to get paid and applauded for being vulnerable. So go put it on the stage. We love it there, you know, so that instead of reacting to the world, and this is where I think getting conscious is important. I truly believe that no artist needs to suffer. People don't need to wreck their relationship to have a song or an album to write. We actually need to heal ourselves. And through that process, our art, our writing can be a healing process for us and others, and a way for people to connect and be heard and be seen.
That's beautiful. And that's a very feminine quality. You know, I don't want to say male, female, but we talk a lot about masculine and feminine qualities. That's that self-care, that caring. And I want to kind of, you know, come into that bring it back to what Shelley mentioned about being a mom. Because not all of us, you know, are moms. I have the challenge of also, you know, doing my work while being a mom as well. But there's also that feminine and nurturing energy in all of us. But yeah, Shelley, did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Just jumping off of Wendy, that there's this is just facts again, of there's over 500 Native American languages, and in all of them there's no word for art.
Wow.
Really?
There is also no word
just part. There's also no what?
There's no word for dirt either in any Native American language.
Wow.
And a scholar, a Harvard scholar, who's an American person, told me this, so I haven't, you know, checked, but I believe her. And what she explained to me is that Native American beliefs is that everything is medicine and everything is art. And it's us in Western culture that have made this partition to even ask the question, which I understand. But that really was a lovely thing when I had that conversation, and I kind of internalized that right away. So pass that on to whoever asked that question about.
That's wonderful, because I also wanted to mention, like, you know, Wendy, you were saying in a post, everyone is so creative. As humans, we are creative, we create. And so to even draw a line between who's an artist and who isn't feels, you know, wrong as well. It's just there's certain ways that people who feel completely drawn to do art, like they have to do it. There's a specific mindset. I think,
As you said, a mindset and a wiring, right?
a
But
wiring, yeah.
literally every human body is designed to sing. Every human mind has an imagination. Like, I don't know what 2-year-old doesn't grab a crayon and scribble on a wall. Like we're designed to create and be creative and find. I think we just need to find which is ours, right? And whether that, it doesn't have to be a career. And you mentioned earlier how, like, we are all brought up with, oh, you need a second job, something to fall back on. I think that's number one, just a parent's concern that I want my kid to be okay when I'm not here. Like, I want them to, like,
Right.
I think that's part of it. And, you know, someone said to me the other day about their kid who's so talented. I'm like, she's an artist. I don't know what her career will be yet, but she's an artist. She's an amazing songwriter. She's young. And she said, it's just so hard. And I'm like, yeah, but if she was a brain surgeon, that would be hard too.
Right, and expensive.
So it's like, wherever your passion is, like, that's
Yeah.
what's going to get you out of bed every day, and that's where your skills and like abundance is. So go for it.
Right. When I first had my son, I think, you know, as we start to wrap up here, like, I read something about the fact that we have to start educating our children for things that don't exist. So we weren't raising children now to be something specific. We're raising them for things that don't exist yet, because the world is moving so much.
Yeah.
And so that creative and critical thinking and thought and being flexible and inventing was really seen as very important. So
Cool.
So, you know, we think about, you know, how we're going to take this into the future. We've got kind of 1 minute into our time here, and I'd love for each one of you to maybe state something of what is the artist of the future? What is the future for artists? What is that thing that artists should focus on? You know, what are we going to be? What do you want to say about artists and the future? Open-ended. I'm making it hard.
I feel like the challenge of our times right now is that we are subtly being roboticized and having a robotic response, or non-emotional but pleasant. You know, everything being in that zone is making speaking robotic normalized and responding in a robotic way. So in acting, you know, we're things that mix that up with you know, the way things are in storytelling in that way. So I think that whether you're an actor or get a job, you're going to be a person that is a healer in some way, to bring people back to their own essence rather than being a people pleaser, wall to wall.
Yeah.
And that's really the challenge of our times, because people pleasing it is how people are brought up to.
Right.
Just that's it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes.
Nice. I think the future is also community, like for an artist to find their voice and to speak to a community, to bring community together. I mean, look at us here. We're doing it online, right? We need community more than ever. I think that community is global. It's also very small and specific. So I do think that the future is more and more about community and connection.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely. Tina, how about you?
I do love the idea of supporting even outside of your own specific art. I think there's some strong communities out there when everyone from photographers to painters to poets come together and supporting each other's art. I think that's kind of how you keep some truth in that. I think, to Shelley's point about people just wanting to be nice and being a bit robotic, you kind of keep a bit more of the truth together when everybody's sharing their artistic work in different genres.
Absolutely.
Shelley, I think you need to write a book. We could spend so much more time. I would love to know how did you find your creativity again when you came out of the cult and, connecting with that part of yourself again? And gosh, a million questions, but
Totally.
I would love for all three of you
Together
to,
when you get out here.
I just want to say thank you so much. I could talk with all three of you for, all night. I think a lot of our guests, I'm sure, would love to hear a lot more. So thank you for coming together. Thank you for bringing this community together for this event. And everybody, thank you for coming and watching and supporting and adding your comments. I look forward to reading them all. And we did record this, and we are doing a YouTube channel. So this will go up on that so that we'll be able to watch it again. And there are links in the chat to reach everybody, to reach out and connect and build community. So have a great night, and thanks again.
Thank you so much.
thank you, everybody.
The
All right.
questions in the chat.
Yes, questions in the chat. Yeah, links and whatnot. Great. All right, see you all soon.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
So nice to meet you all. My God.
I love meeting amazing people, amazing women, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Karen.